Hey there, welcome to my keto recovery. Thought I'd give my backstory a little bit of kind of how I got here and a little bit of what I've done to get to the point where I am today. Everyone likes an origin story. I always loved Spider-Man and Marvel Comics growing up, even before this movie craze came out. I dressed as Spider-Man almost every Halloween because I loved him so much. So we all like an origin story, right? My life before I was keto, I would put on weight as an adult. I'd get heavier and heavier, putting on pounds, and then just kept getting heavier until about my heaviest I ever got to was 316 pounds, and that was the largest scale amount that I had ever seen. So I was at that point diagnosed as pre-diabetic. I had an A1C score of 6.0. I have asthma, sleep apnea, and I had no energy, and ADHD as well. So, kind of my backstory there. And I'd known for quite a while I needed a focus for a lifestyle change, not just a diet. I needed to have something I could do every day. I've known that for a while. I just could never figure out what that was. I tried a lot of diets. Mostly it was, calories in, calories out, working out, that kind of thing. Focusing there. And so one time I was just like, oh, I'll just work out as much as I can and I don't care what I eat. And that didn't work out well either. But I would sometimes lose weight, maybe 20, 30 pounds, maybe I think even once up to like 50 pounds. But then I put on even more. And that was pretty typical. And I'd start and fail many times. I'd commit to myself and say, oh, I'm starting today. And by the afternoon, I'd be off plan. And I don't know, I probably did that well over 100 times. It was a constant struggle for me. So how I kind of found out about the ketogenic lifestyle, I probably had heard of it. I just didn't really know what it was. So I never really investigated it. I never really looked into other ways of eating too much, other than just calories in, calories out, if I did do that. So the first time I really got an idea of what it was is I had a relative who was doing it in the summer, I found out about it in the summer of 2019. And they had lost probably 30 or 40 pounds at that point. It was pretty significant, and had him describe it to me, what it was. And the way they described it, I'm like, oh, it kind of sounds like it's the Atkins diet, very low carbohydrates, and fat and protein. And that was the focus. So I knew a little bit about the Atkins diet, and it's kind of what I identified with keto. So that was probably June of 2019 when I did that. And then next time I came up on it, or something like it, is I watched Vinnie Tortorich's Fat, a documentary, in August of 2019. And I watched that movie, and it was like a light bulb went off. All these things started making sense. Not to go over the whole movie, but he kind of goes over a lot of the history of nutrition and how corporations and the food industry and a lot of the government kind of made this what we think of the food pyramid, and how it's supposed to work, and it really doesn't. It doesn't work for people. And Ansel Keys out of the University of Minnesota was one of the big people responsible for it, and he worked with the American Heart Association, and he had a study called I think it was called the 7 country study, where he kind of cherry picked 7 countries and said, look, they're eating a low fat diet and they're healthy. And then if you examine more countries, you'd actually see it's a little more scattered than that. So he had a crusade against saturated fat, and that's the thing of Vinnie Tortorich's movie, A Fat, a documentary, is it kind of talked about how saturated fat's not bad for you. It's a very good thing to have, and it's good for brain development. It's good for people who have epilepsy. That's kind of why the ketogenic diet was originally created about 100 years ago, and just kind of went over the history of nutrition and also the problems we have in this country with obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and all those things. And it just made sense to me. And I'm like, wow, this is. And he also kind of talked very briefly about what you could eat, and I'm like, well, those kind of things I could probably do, but I don't know. I kind of like having all the foods that I have, and I had the standard American diet, everything that was bad for you and processed and everything. So anyway, that movie got me started, and I thought I could really do more research. So I did more research on this. I watched a lot of YouTube videos with Thomas DeLauer, Eric Berg, Ken Berry, and Eric Westman was another one. And I did a lot of Google research as well, looking up articles and the pros and the cons. I also watched videos from people who were critics of the keto diet, because I'm like, well, what do they have to say? And I would analyze their comments and see, kind of weigh it all together. And I did find out about the side effects of it, pros and cons, side effects, and what people were saying about it. And there's a lot of unfounded information out there, and just because we haven't done a lot of research, so not. But yeah, so I did a little bit of it, and I said, at some point I can probably do it. It's just not something I'll jump into right away, but one time I'll kind of decide to start. So that was, it started in August, and we rolled all the way to November, and I've been thinking about it off and on, and I work in a bank, so I had Veterans Day. It was Veterans Day weekend, I remember. I thought, I'll have that Monday off of that weekend, so it'd be a 3-day weekend for me. I'm going to start the way of eating on that weekend. And then if I have this keto flu, which I hear about, and I have the side effects of it, I'll have an extra day to hopefully recover from it. So that was kind of my orientation. But so I started it that weekend. And as far as a keto flu, I'd say I think it was day 2. I had maybe a little bit of a headache, but after that, I really didn't have much of the keto flu. The one thing I did get was Keto Breath, and that was a bear to deal with. That probably hung around for like almost 2 weeks, and that was my biggest challenge. So it wasn't the most pleasant. I was brushing my teeth 3-4 times a day, but after a certain point, it really improved and got better. So I didn't have to worry about it. The other thing is too, I noticed a lot of my conditions, my asthma, I had been taking my inhalers every day at that point. And something in my food must have been setting some of that off at that point, because I stopped taking my inhalers. I didn't need it. My asthma was in check, probably for at least 5 months before I touched an inhaler again, when the spring came around, and got a little bit of allergies and stuff, but it was, even when it came back, it was a lot less reduced. And I also immediately felt satiated and full. I didn't feel like I had to eat constantly, and that was my trouble in the past. Is I just ate all the time. I couldn't stop eating. I love stuffing myself and being full, almost uncomfortably full. I almost like that feeling. It was like a thing. I remember I'd fantasize about eating a baked potato and how I'd eat maybe 2 or 3 of them and just load them up with sour cream and cheese and butter, and just kind of lay there in a coma and like that feeling. And I didn't have a need to feel like that anymore. My ADHD got markedly improved. And I was told that I was a lot more coherent, a lot more alert. And I'd never medicated for my ADHD. But they immediately noticed that my conditions greatly improved. The other thing is too, is I had this rash I dealt with for years on my abdomen, and to the point where I would sometimes get in sores. I remember just putting hydrogen peroxide on it, because the sores would get so bad. And I dealt with that for years. And within probably start of 2020, it was completely gone. Just completely disappeared. So I was having food allergy or a reaction or something with a lot of these health conditions I had, and I never even thought about that. I was doing this mostly for weight loss. And I had never weighed myself starting out, so I don't know how much I actually weighed. But before I started the ketogenic lifestyle in early November, I'd bought new pairs of jeans. They were the biggest waist I could get. I think they were a 46 or maybe even a 48 waist. And by the end of November, I was noticing these jeans were loose, like looser than what I had when I bought them. And I put them through the wash a few times, and I was like, aren't they supposed to be getting tighter? And I kind of thought about that. And so by the end of November, I stepped on the scale. I'd never stepped on the scale because I just basically I just printed off a list of keto foods and ate that. I wasn't tracking or anything. I wasn't counting calories or tracking my macros or anything. I was kind of keeping a back door of, keeping low carb, but I don't even know if I was necessarily at a certain carb threshold. I know it was definitely probably low carb. I just wasn't counting them. So, but considering where I came from and I was on the standard American diet, it probably didn't really matter. So, I stepped on the scale. At the end of November, I was about 304 pounds. And I was like, oh, well, I'm down from my heaviest, so that's something. And then I also noticed I was sleeping better. I had more energy. And sometimes I only have to sleep 5 or 6 hours and I feel rested. I didn't have to nap like I used to. Sometimes I'd nap like 3 or 4 times during the week, during the day, or right after work or something. Wasn't doing that at all. And when I started this lifestyle and when I was tracking, stepping on the scale, I was having double-digit losses every month. 12 pounds here, 13, sometimes even 15, just peeling right off me. And that was probably just years of abuse to my body, just melting right off. Probably the beginning of the year, I found a group. It's kind of a support group. Some Minnesota Ketonians, people that live a ketogenic lifestyle, and it was great. We get together once a month. We talk about ideas to improve our challenges or struggles, and other things to focus on and improve in our lives, and what new things or ideas were coming out in the keto circles. And it was a great group, and I got found a lot of support online as well. A lot of Facebook groups that I'm in, probably in about a half dozen or so that I focus on, and I really got some good ideas there. And then the pandemic hit, so it's about a year now. I started working out. I hadn't been working out at this point at all. I was just peeling off weight. One thing I thought I could do is, because I was tracking back at the end of November, is that I could eat my calories that I burned, and it turned out that kind of slowed me down a little bit. Still losing weight, so it wasn't a big deal, but I would have these little stalls for a week or two, but it kept coming off. I'd lose 5-6 pounds a week, which compared to the double-digit losses is a little bit of a letdown, but I kind of knew at some point it would probably slow down. So I started working out, and I noticed my appetite increase. So it's kind of the thing is I know I have probably a food addiction problem, because ketogenic lifestyle was a great tool to get me started and feel satiated in some cases, but at certain times I would still feel like I need to eat, or I was hungry, and I knew had probably had enough, and it wasn't necessary. So it's a great tool in my keto recovery here. So where I am now is I'm down as of today for my heaviest. I'm down 117 pounds. I just crossed yesterday into Wonderland officially, which I haven't been in since I was in college, so it's been a while. I'd probably say I'm about 20 less than 20 pounds away from my what I call my reevaluation goal, where I'm going to have a goal weight and then kind of reevaluate where I want to go from beyond that. I still haven't figured out that process yet, but just working towards that goal. But I know that I have this addiction problem and with food addiction, and I want to get a handle, um, maybe not even a handle on it, because I just want to be consciously in recovery, I think, while I'm dealing with it. And I think being in recovery is the key. So I switched into the lion diet here for March just to see if it helped with, I do have sleep apnea as well. But that's greatly improved, but not eliminated, as well as my asthma. I have a little bit of a flare up here, but in the spring, but I just wanted to see if there was any improvement. So I'm doing the lion diet, which, if you don't know, is pretty much beef only. And I wouldn't say I'm beef only, but I'm 90% just beef. The only things I've added that I do is I have a few ounces of sauerkraut every night for healthy gut microbiome, keeping my good bacteria in there. And I have some apple cider vinegar sometime to help with some appetite issues at night. And then a couple times I put olive oil in a skillet while I fried a steak. So I'm not completely lion diet, but I'm fairly close. So I'm not a purist, but I'm pretty dang close. Also, what I did here is I switched just prior to starting the lion diet, focusing more on my macros. I did the typical when I started here on the keto lifestyle. I did 5% of my calories came from carbs, 25 from protein, and 70 for fat. And now I've upped it and changed a little bit for the fat to protein. Doing 5% carbs is still, and then doing 35% protein and 60% fat. So still getting most of my calories from fat, but also getting a lot of protein in there. I've started working out a lot more. I got a gym membership at the beginning of the year. Started to just try to build a little muscle, but I'm still more focused on weight loss. So just try not to lose any muscle, and hopefully I'll put on a little bit here and there too. I think I have. My downfall is I don't want to measure anything other than the scale, which I probably should, but I just don't. And then I wanted to start kind of a place where I could share about my food addiction and recovery with the ketogenic lifestyle and keto. I think it's been a great way to start this chapter of my life. And I think, I don't know if I'll be ketogenic the rest of my life, but I think I'll definitely be low carb. Just makes more sense. And considering what I know now about how my body reacts to this, it just, it'll just be a good tool, I think. So I'm going to have these avenues available on social media. I think social media can be a great thing. It can also be a bad thing. But I'm going to try to use it as a tool for good and reach out and connect with others and see if I can get help from others. Maybe people have better ideas on this than me. And I'll talk about my journey. So this is a little bit longer one, but I'm hoping to share more and learn and grow from this experience. And I hope you get some benefit out of it now and then.